Picture this. It's Sunday night. You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, you promised yourself, tomorrow you'll finally start. Tomorrow you'll begin that project. Tomorrow you'll make that call. Tomorrow you'll take the first step toward your dream. But here's the truth we all know but rarely admit. Tomorrow never comes. What if I told you that the gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't about motivation? It's not about inspiration. It's not even about having the perfect plan. The gap is action. Pure, imperfect, messy action. Welcome to Mindful Book, a guide that will rewire how you think about getting things done. Over this video, you're going to learn why your brain sabotages your success, how to override its resistance, and the exact strategies used by the world's highest performers to make action automatic. But I need you to do something right now. Don't just listen passively. As we go through this, I want you to identify one thing, just one, that you've been putting off. Hold it in your mind, because by the end of this audiobook, you're going to know exactly how to tackle it. Let's begin. Part 1. The Action Paradox. The waiting game we all play. Here's a story about Marcus, a 32-year-old graphic designer from Seattle. For 3 years, Marcus talked about starting his own design agency. He read books about entrepreneurship, he watched YouTube videos, he even created a business plan that sat in a folder on his desktop, untouched for months. His friends would ask, "So when are you launching?" His answer was always the same, "Soon, I'm just waiting until he had more savings, until he took one more course, until the timing was perfect, until he felt ready." Does this sound familiar? Here's what Marcus didn't understand, and what most people don't understand. Readiness is a myth. It's a beautiful, comfortable lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of action. Why your brain fights you. Your brain is not designed to help you succeed. It's designed to keep you safe. And in your brain's ancient operating system, safety means staying exactly where you are. Think about our ancestors 50,000 years ago. The ones who took unnecessary risks, they became food for predators. The ones who stayed in the cave, who waited, who overthought, they survived. They became your ancestors. You've inherited a brain with a negativity bias, a mental alarm system that screams danger whenever you try something new. Starting that business? Danger. Having that difficult conversation? Danger. Putting your work out into the world? Maximum danger. This is why motivation fails. You can watch all the inspiring videos you want, but when it comes time to act, your brain floods you with fear disguised as rational thinking. Maybe I need more information. What if I fail? I'm not quite ready yet. These aren't thoughtful considerations. They're your survival instinct trying to keep you in the cave. The 5-second window. Research in neuroscience reveals something fascinating. You have approximately 5 seconds between having an impulse to act and your brain talking you out of it. 5 seconds. In that tiny window, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for courage and decision-making, is active. But if you hesitate, if you wait, your limbic system kicks in. That's the emotional, fearful part of your brain. And it will win every single time. This is why the phrase, "I'll do it later," is so dangerous. Later never comes, because your window has closed. So what happened to Marcus? One Tuesday morning, he woke up and realized he'd been preparing for 3 years. 3 years! He calculated that he'd spent over 800 hours learning, planning, and waiting. That day, he did something radical. He opened his laptop and sent 5 emails to potential clients. Imperfect emails, emails that made him cringe when he reread them, but he sent them. One replied, then another. Within 2 months, he had his first 3 clients. The work wasn't perfect, his systems were messy, he made mistakes, but he was finally in the game, learning through action instead of preparation. Here's the paradox. Action doesn't require readiness. Readiness requires action. Let that sink in. Part 2. The physics of action. Newton's law applied to life. Remember Newton's first law of motion? An object at rest stays at rest. An object in motion stays in motion. This isn't just physics, it's psychology. When you're stuck in inaction, every small task feels enormous. Sending one email feels like climbing Everest. Making one phone call becomes this monumental event that requires perfect conditions. But once you start moving, momentum builds. That first email makes the second easier. The second makes the third automatic. Before you know it, you're operating at a level that would have seemed impossible when you were standing still. The story of Sarah's marathon. Let me tell you about Sarah, a 45-year-old accountant who decided to run a marathon. There was just one problem. She hadn't run more than a mile in 20 years. The first day she put on running shoes and stepped outside, something interesting happened. She planned to run 3 miles. She made it exactly 400 meters before she had to stop, hands on knees, gasping for air. Most people would call that failure. Sarah called it data. The next day, she did 450 meters, then 500. The progress wasn't linear. Some days were worse than others, but she had activated the physics of action. She was an object in motion. 6 months later, she completed her marathon. But here's what she told me that was profound. The marathon was never the point. The point was proving to myself that I could commit to something and follow through. That changed everything else in my life. Breaking the inertia. Starting is the hardest part because inertia is real. Your current state has gravity. If you've been inactive for months or years, that pull is strong. So how do you break free? The micro-action principle. Make your first action so small that your brain can't rationalize avoiding it. Want to write a book? Don't commit to writing for an hour. Commit to writing 1 sentence. Want to start exercising? Don't plan a 45-minute workout. Put on your workout clothes. That's it. Want to launch that business? Don't build the entire website. Buy the domain name. This sounds almost laughably simple, but it's backed by behavioral psychology. Professor B.J. Fogg at Stanford calls this tiny habits, making the behavior so easy that you can't fail. Here's why it works. Once you write that 1 sentence, you'll write another. Once you put on workout clothes, you'll probably do a few exercises. Once you buy that domain, you'll start thinking about what comes next. You're not tricking yourself. You're using the physics of motion to overcome the inertia of rest. The power of consecutive days. Let me share something that transformed my own life, the concept of don't break the chain. A comedian named Jerry Seinfeld reportedly used this method. He got a big wall calendar, and every day he wrote new jokes, he put a red X on that day. After a few days, he had a chain. His only job was to not break the chain. The magic isn't in any single day. The magic is in the accumulation. When you take action for 1 day, it's easy to skip the next. But when you have a chain of 5 days, then 10, then 30, breaking it feels like destroying something valuable, because you are. One of my clients, David, used this to quit smoking after 15 years. He didn't focus on never smoking again. That was too overwhelming. He focused on not breaking his streak of smoke-free days. Day 1 was brutal. Day 7 was hard. Day 30 was challenging. But by day 90, the chain had its own momentum. The identity shift had happened. He was no longer a smoker trying to quit. He was a non-smoker protecting his streak. Think about your one thing, that action you identified at the beginning. What's the smallest possible version of that action? So small it feels almost silly. That's your starting point. Part 3. Overcoming the Resistance. Meet your inner saboteur. Stephen Pressfield calls it resistance, with a capital R. It's that force that shows up right when you're about to do something important. About to start your workout? Suddenly you remember an urgent email you need to send. About to work on your business? Your house has never looked more in need of cleaning. About to have a difficult conversation? Maybe now isn't the right time. Maybe tomorrow would be better. Resistance is clever. It doesn't come at you with obviously bad ideas. It comes disguised as rationality, as responsibility, as wisdom. The story of James and his novel. James wanted to write a novel. He'd wanted to write it for 12 years. He had the story mapped out in his head, he had the characters, he had the opening line memorized. But every time he sat down to write, resistance showed up with a different disguise. Sometimes it was perfectionism. This sentence isn't good enough. I need to revise it before moving forward. Sometimes it was research. I can't write this scene until I know more about 18th century maritime law. Sometimes it was comparison. Who am I to write a novel? Real writers have MFAs. Real writers have talent. James spent years negotiating with resistance, and he lost every negotiation. Then he learned something crucial. You can't negotiate with resistance. You can't defeat it. You can only ignore it. The 5-minute rule. Here's a practical tool that changed James's life. The 5-minute rule. When resistance shows up, and it always shows up, you make a deal with yourself. You'll do the thing you're resisting for just 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you can stop. No judgment. The secret? After 5 minutes, you almost never want to stop. The starting was the hard part. The continuing is much easier. James used this to finally write his novel. 5 minutes a day became 10. 10 became 20. Some days he'd look up and realize hours had passed. The first draft took him 8 months. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. But it existed. He'd gone from dreamer to doer. That's an identity shift that changes everything. Dealing with fear. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Fear. You're not avoiding action because you're lazy. You're avoiding action because you're afraid. Afraid of failure, afraid of success, afraid of judgment, afraid of finding out you're not as talented as you hoped, afraid of change. Here's the truth. That fear never goes away. The most successful people in the world still feel it. The difference is they've learned to act despite it, not after it disappears. There's a concept in psychology called opposite action. When your emotion is telling you to avoid, you deliberately do the opposite. You feel the fear and you move toward it anyway. The 5-minute myth. One of the biggest lies we believe, I'll take action once I feel confident. That's backwards. Confidence isn't the prerequisite for action. Confidence is the result of action. Think about anything you're currently confident doing. Driving a car, having a conversation, your job. Whatever it is, you weren't confident before you started. You became confident through repetition. You didn't learn to drive by reading about driving until you felt ready. You got in the car, terrified, with someone next to you. You stalled the engine. You pressed the gas too hard. You made mistakes. And through those imperfect actions, you built competence. And through competence, you built confidence. The same applies to everything else. I remember when I started public speaking. My first talk was to 30 people in a small room. My hands shook, my voice cracked. I forgot entire sections of my presentation. It was objectively bad, but I did it. And the next one was slightly less bad, and the one after that was almost okay. Years later, I've spoken to audiences of thousands. I'm still nervous before every talk, but I'm also confident. Not because the fear left, but because I've proven to myself that I can do it even when I'm afraid. That's the only path to confidence. Action in the presence of fear. Part 4. The Action System. Building your action architecture. Let's get practical. You can't rely on willpower or motivation. They're finite resources. What you need is a system, an architecture that makes action the path of least resistance. Strategy 1. The Night Before Protocol. Every evening, before you go to bed, decide on your top 3 actions for tomorrow. Not tasks, actions, specific, concrete behaviors. Not work on project, that's vague. Write the first 500 words of the project proposal, that's an action. Not exercise, do 20 push-ups and a 10-minute walk, that's an action. Not eat healthy, prepare overnight oats and cut vegetables for lunch, that's an action. Write these down, put them somewhere you'll see them first thing in the morning. Why? Because decision-making depletes energy. If you wake up and have to figure out what to do, you've already lost. The moment you start thinking, "What should I do today?" is the moment resistance swoops in with distractions. Remove the decision. Execute the plan. Strategy 2. The First Hour Rule. The first hour after you wake up determines your entire day. If you spend it scrolling social media, checking email, and consuming other people's priorities, you've programmed your brain for reactivity. You'll spend the rest of the day responding instead of creating. But if you spend it on your most important action before the world makes demands on you, you've won the day before most people have started. Tim Ferriss calls it putting on your own oxygen mask first. Stephen Covey called it first things first. Same principle. Your most important action happens before anything else can interfere. Strategy 3. The 2-day rule. Life happens. You'll miss days. The key is never missing 2 days in a row. Missed your workout yesterday? Fine, but today is non-negotiable. Didn't work on your project yesterday? Okay, but you're doing it today. The 2-day rule prevents temporary setbacks from becoming permanent backsliding. 1 day missed is a pause. 2 days missed is the beginning of a new pattern, a pattern of inaction. Strategy 4. The Accountability Structure. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Most people are more committed to not disappointing others than to not disappointing themselves. Use this. Find an accountability partner, not someone who will be nice and understanding when you fail, someone who will call you on your excuses. Tell them your commitment. Tell them your specific action. Check in daily. One of my clients joined a 5 a.m. workout group. He told me, "I wouldn't wake up at 5 a.m. for myself, but I wake up for them. I don't want to be the person who doesn't show up." That's not weakness. That's strategic self-awareness. Strategy 5. The Victory Log. Every evening, write down 3 actions you completed. Not accomplishments, not achievements. Actions. I sent the email. I made the call. I wrote for 20 minutes. This does something powerful in your brain. You're training yourself to see action as progress. You're building evidence that you're a person who follows through. Over weeks and months, this log becomes proof of your transformation. On days when you feel like you're not making progress, you can look back and see hundreds of actions that say otherwise. The integration. Here's how these strategies work together. Tonight, you'll decide your 3 actions for tomorrow. You'll wake up and execute your most important one in the first hour. You'll check in with your accountability partner. If you miss a day, you'll refuse to miss the second. And before bed, you'll record your actions in your victory log. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about building a system that makes action inevitable. The only moment that matters. We've covered a lot in the last half hour. The action paradox, the physics of motion, overcoming resistance, building your action system. But none of it matters if you don't do one thing. Take action in the next 5 minutes. Not tomorrow, not when you finish this audiobook. In the next 5 minutes. Remember Marcus, the designer who waited 3 years? Remember Sarah, who couldn't run 400 meters? Remember James, who spent 12 years not writing his novel? They were all stuck in the same trap, believing that some future version of themselves would be more ready, more capable, more deserving of success. There is no future version. There's only you, right now, in this moment. Your one thing. Earlier, I asked you to think of one thing you've been putting off. You have it in mind, right? Here's what I want you to do. In the next 5 minutes, take the smallest possible action toward that thing. Not the big action, the tiny one. If it's a phone call you've been avoiding, don't make the call yet. Just look up the number. Put it in your contacts. That's it. If it's a project you need to start, don't create the whole plan. Just open a blank document and write one sentence about it. If it's a conversation you need to have, don't have it yet. Just text the person and say, "Hey, can we talk this week?" These actions seem almost trivial, but they're not. They're the crack in the dam. They're the first domino. They're the end of inertia and the beginning of motion. The ripple effect. Here's what you need to understand. The action you take in the next 5 minutes won't just move you toward your goal, it will start to change your identity. You'll go from being someone who thinks about doing things to someone who does things. That identity shift is everything. Because once you see yourself as a person of action, every decision becomes easier. Every choice aligns with that identity. People of action don't wait for motivation. I guess I'll start now. People of action don't make excuses. I guess I'll figure it out. People of action don't quit after one setback. I guess I'll try again. The promise. I can't promise that action will be comfortable. It won't be. I can't promise that you won't fail. You will, many times. I can't promise that your fear will disappear. It won't. But I can promise this. Every action you take builds evidence that you're capable of more than you imagined. Every action strengthens the connection between intention and execution. Every action moves you from the person you are to the person you're becoming. And that person, that future version of you who has achieved what you're dreaming about right now, they exist because of the actions you're about to take. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready, not when the time is perfect. Now. So here's my challenge to you. Close this audiobook, take out your phone or a piece of paper, write down your one thing, and then take the smallest possible action toward it before you do anything else. 5 minutes, one action, no excuses. Because here's the truth. You don't need to force yourself to take massive action. You just need to stop forcing yourself to stay still. The momentum will take care of the rest. Your 5 minutes start now.